Every decade, one designer comes along and changes how everyone dresses. They propose a new aesthetic, and that becomes the norm not just in fashion, but in society. Not a lot of people realize, but for today, for 2025, that designer is a duo of Christophe Lemaire and Sarah-Linh Tran, designer of their own namesake brand Lemaire and also Uniqlo U. In the 80s, that designer was 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝘁𝗍𝗶, 90s Helmut Lang, 2000s 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝘁𝗍𝗶, 2010s Demna, 2020s Lemaire? Everyone remembers 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝘁𝗍𝗶's black skinny jeans, and everybody remembers 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗁's destroyed sweater. What the hell did Lemaire make? And yeah, while I own a lot of Lemaire, I wasn't convinced that he was the head honcho of fashion either. Until I went to a fashion event a few months ago for a different designer. In the crowd of incredibly well-dressed people that showed up, while many people sported pieces from the guest designer, it wasn't the most common brand in the room. The most common brand, by a huge margin, was Lemaire. Every other person had a Lemaire Croissant Bag. In fact, even one of the guest designer's own team members had a croissant bag. At that moment, I was like, oh my god, Lemaire is already everywhere. And in fact, I can prove it to you, the viewer, right now using your own closet. Your own wardrobe has been changed by Lemaire, even if you're not into the designer fashion. This is a Uniqlo U Airism cotton tee. This is a Uniqlo U crew neck tee. The question isn't whether you've owned them, it's how many of them are in your closet. Today I can walk for 5 minutes in any city street in the world, and I can see someone wearing one of these two tees. But that's not even the full extent. Haven't you seen this bag everywhere? The Uniqlo U drawstring bag. And guess what? They were all designed by Lemaire. Lemaire has already infiltrated your wardrobe. If the measure for influence of a designer is how much they've changed the dressing habits of the general population, not just fashion nerds, Lemaire triumphs over 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗂𝘁𝗃 and even 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗂𝘁𝗃. And Lemaire's influence is not only just bags and t-shirts, it's his entire design language. It's already all over fashion. If you walk around town, you'll see fashionistas dressed like this, and maybe like this. All that is influenced by Lemaire. But what is his design language? Well, to understand that, we have to go back to the source, to Japan. So everybody knows this aesthetic comes from Japan. What people don't know is that Lemaire actually adopted a Japanese aesthetic, remixed it, and repopularized it in Japan before anyone else did. You see, the Japanese aesthetic actually comes from America. After World War II, many American GIs were stationed in Japan. Their blue jeans and short jackets became an object of status. And as you can imagine, the Japanese post-war youths were massive America-boos. They wanted to dress like Americans, going as far as importing used clothing from America, especially workwear and military. Those were seen as the most authentically American. And yeah, even today, your gramps' old clothing that you toss away at Goodwill, a lot of it is actually going to Japan. But there's a little problem, you see. Americans are big and Asians are small. And there's only so much size S flight jackets and size 30 jeans to go around. So if you're a Japanese America-boo and you want the real American clothes, you kinda have to deal with the fact that they're gonna be too big. Well, guess what? The Japanese quickly discovered that fit wasn't really a problem. You just wear a flight jacket really big and belt down your blue jeans. Not a big deal. This is why oversized clothes is commonplace in Japan, and why even after America abandoned it after the hip-hop craze of the 90s, Japan held on to the oversized fits. To Lemaire, there's a sort of nonchalance and softness to oversized clothing. Contrasted against the rough, American workwear and military wear, it becomes something chic. You can observe this dynamic for both his own label and for Uniqlo U. For example, this Lemaire 4 Pockets jacket from the latest season is actually based on a USGI battle dress uniform, aka BDU jacket. Notice the 4 pockets with the square flaps, and the placket covering the buttons. This was actually the US military uniform not too long ago, and now it looks sort of cool and chic. And this love for Americana is everywhere. In fact, everybody's favorite Lemaire item, the twisted jeans, it actually comes from vintage American denim culture. Because back in the day, all jeans were raw. Because of the weave, when you wash it, the leg actually twists, where the seams go to the front. Well, Lemaire remixed it, where he mirrored the leg twist on both legs and made it wider, like how a Japanese kid will wear it oversized. And this mock neck sweatshirt that Uniqlo U releases every single fall-winter season, well, this is actually a US Navy flight deck jersey. And it's truly bewildering how diverse Lemaire's historical references are. Sometimes they'll even reference historical ethnic clothing, like an Asian nomadic water skin for the croissant bag. Look at this guy right here with his XL croissant bag. I bet there was cheap stuff in the Essence sale back then. And the popular Lemaire wrap coat? Well, that's actually a Soviet World War II greatcoat. I'd love to just visit the Lemaire HQ just to see what kind of crazy stuff they have in their archives. I bet it'll be like a museum. But before we go on, there's one thing we have to set straight. You see, there's plenty of Japanese brands nowadays that are faithfully reproducing historical garments. Lemaire is not one of them. Instead, Lemaire erases some of that history. The BDU jacket doesn't come in olive green, and the twisted jeans are mostly not indigo blue. These garments are offered in washed out, desaturated earth tones like beige, brown, in addition to black and white. By doing so, the historical garment becomes a base, a blank canvas, for Lemaire's design language to emerge. But wait, hold on a second. When we talk about Lemaire's design language, which design language are we referring to? Because Christophe and his previous romantic partner, Sarah-Linh, have very different viewpoints. In previous interviews, they mentioned they have a dialectic way of working. What they mean is to have two opposing viewpoints that they blend together into something completely new and different. In terms of responsibility, Christophe mostly does the men's, while Sarah-Linh does the women's and the accessories. Fortunately, they have told us very directly what Lemaire's design vocabulary is. Christophe says, clothes that aged nobly was wear, the effect of time, washed out worn dry silks, poplin, denim, stitching, and polished leather. A bit sartorial for the girls, and a bit flowing for the guys. Mixing genders, unisex. There is so much in this single snippet, so let me unpack it a bit. First of all, notice how much he talks about fabric. In fact, fabric is the most important thing for Lemaire. He's outright said that they do not compromise on fabric quality. Fabric cost is an important part of the garment cost, which they can only do because they are an independent designer, not pressured by a corporate sales structure. If you want to understand what he's saying, refer to my video on fashion pricing where we derive the final price of a piece of clothing starting from the fabric cost. If you've ever handled Lemaire clothing on a rack in a boutique, you'll notice how Lemaire chooses a lot of very light, very flowy fabrics, especially for spring-summer collections. Here's a suit jacket from Uniqlo U, and notice just how light and unstructured it is, despite being a suit made for men. Next, Christophe emphasizes the idea of time. Clothing that ages nobly was wear. And the most obvious symbol of time is the stitching. He's kind of being coy and not saying what kind of stitching, but let me show you some examples from my own wardrobe. Here's a pair of Lemaire twisted jeans. If you look at a twisted seam running down the front, you'll see this very prominent double needle stitch. What happens is that after many washes and many wears, it fades and acquires this very wavy texture that becomes a decorative element in its own right. But you have to work for it by wearing the garment and living with it. Here's another example from Uniqlo U. This is a coat for women's. And if you take a look at the edges of the fabric, especially the lapel here, you can see how this stitching becomes really wavy. I've owned this coat since 2020 and I wear it every single year. And it only gets better every single year. And the fact that I'm wearing a woman's coat says something else about Lemaire. Almost everything is unisex. For the women's line, Lemaire gives you very men's-like clothing. These tailored jackets and these jeans. It's almost like they were patterned for men's, with their oversized fit for women's, and their right side buttons. So Christophe's design is very zen-like and very restrained. Sarah-Linh takes it and rounds it out with a flower. I find that ever since Sarah-Linh has become more involved, there's been more decorative elements in Lemaire, like the woman's tops with a foulard, this little fabric bit that you can tie around your neck. Things are more playful, accessories like the harmonica necklace. In the same interview as the previous one, Sarah-Linh describes Lemaire's design vocabulary as loose fits, folds, layering effects, pairings, overlaps, asymmetry, stretch proportions, and oversized collars. And similar to Christophe, she's also being a bit coy with her words. The most obvious example of the stretch proportions are the collars. Very few people have realized that Lemaire shirt collars are actually shaped differently than everyone else. Here is a Uniqlo U shirt collar, and here is a shirt from regular Uniqlo. On the regular shirt, if you do up all the buttons, you can see how the shirt collar forms a U shape in the front. But the Lemaire one, the Uniqlo U one, if you button it up, it forms a V. What this does is it makes a shirt, a formal and sartorial item, look slightly different from your average business uniform. There's even more of these tiny Lemaireisms everywhere in their clothing. It's hard to notice because it's what we perceive as normal in fashion now. And this kind of clothing is literally everywhere. Uniqlo U was how I got into fashion, as was many others of my generation, especially in Japan. The price-value proposition for Uniqlo U is really off the charts, and it's sort of become a uniform for Japanese youth that's interested in fashion. In fact, here's a juicy rumor. The round shoulder bag that everyone and their grandma owns. Rumor is that Lemaire actually helped design it. It obviously looks like the water skin or the croissant bag, and the first iteration had this matte, wrinkly nylon that felt like Lemaire's signature dry silk. And thanks to all these efforts, Lemaire's design language is now truly the vernacular, and it spawned a litany of Japanese domestic brands that are now speaking in the same language. Brands like Stein, Yoke, as well as countless department store brands in Japan. No matter where you go, you see the same loose proportions, the washed out earth tones, and a choice of soft fabrics. And as the story of fashion goes, everything that becomes popular in Japan eventually becomes popular in the West. Alright, dear viewer, I've got a little question for you. If you made it this far and you're a Metronome regular, most likely you would have noticed a feeling brewing inside of you. A feeling of deja vu. This is the first video I've done on Lemaire, but this is not the first time you've heard about this design philosophy from me. In fact, it felt weird for me. I felt like I was constantly repeating my own words. Words for a designer I've spent countless hours researching and talking about. The more research I've done on Lemaire, the more I was completely sure. Lemaire's design philosophy is born out of 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃. Despite all the science being there, it's not mentioned in any interview with Christophe and Sarah-Linh. No professional fashion critic or journalist has ever brought this up either. Is it just me? Am I going crazy? I can't hold this to myself anymore, it's burning me up from the inside. So the next video will be on how Lemaire inherited the 𝗖𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗃 philosophy. That's it, thank you for watching, Metronome out.